Joining us now to discuss is Sui Chung, CEO of CF Benchmark, a cryptocurrency index provider. Hello there, Sui. Great to have you join us. So we're talking about the crypto markets just as Ether hits an all-time high. Again, over 4,600 right there now at trading at $4,641. ETH is breaking out. Bitcoin, on the other hand, it's taking a bit of a step back, or rather it's trading pretty flat for the day. So I'm wondering about what's your take on ETH skyrocketing versus Bitcoin taking a breather or two?
Yeah, well, thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on. Yeah, I think that what we're seeing is a pretty well-trodden pattern whereby new highs are generally set by Bitcoin, and the other major cryptos follow a few days or a few weeks in its wake. So obviously, Bitcoin hit its all-time high about 10 days ago, 11 days ago. And now Ether is following suit, and if history were to repeat itself, we may expect to see some of the other altcoins follow suit and perhaps see some price appreciation action.
We did see that actually with Solana earlier. Solana also reached all-time highs. So you think it's just following Bitcoin's path? It's not to do with ETH and its specific use cases with on NFTs, DeFi, as well as Sheepcoin going up?
Well, I think that for the entire ecosystem, for both Bitcoin and ETH, their underlying more fundamental story that is playing out in the institutional space, certainly something that we encounter more and more, and that is, the digital gold narrative for Bitcoin, the inflation hedge narrative that you very articulately explained at the beginning of this segment, that is permeating the traditional finance sector. And then alongside that is the Web3 narrative, particularly borne out through the DeFi, the growth in DeFi and the DeFi ecosystem that has been built predominantly today on Ethereum. And that also is resonating with the traditional investor base. And so what you see are much more sophisticated views from traditional financial institutions around Bitcoin and its use cases and Ethereum and its use cases.
Mm-hmm. What do you make of the Fed's comments and its latest policy decision? They want to ease they want to taper off the unprecedented bond buying, asset purchases that they've been doing during the pandemic era stimulus time. Could that make the investment environment less risk on, and potentially eliminate excess leverage or froth in the market?
I don't think that itself will change the path of interest rates too much, because the sort of tapering we're talking about, we're coming from basically very, very high levels of asset purchases, unprecedented in the history of the Fed, and slowing them down. So I don't think it's going to have a dramatic effect. And quite frankly, this may be closing the stable door after the horse has bolted, given the size of the Fed balance sheet and the fact that inflation is now running in the 4 to 5% range, that a tapering, the tapering being considered may have a relatively limited effect, and the Fed and indeed all central banks around the world may indeed be behind the curve on this one.
Mm-hmm. So we've got to wrap it up, but before we do, just want to get your outlook on Bitcoin for the end of the year. Do you have a price target?
Well, as an index provider, we're not in the business of forecasting or having price targets. But what I would say is that with the advent of the ETF, the ProShares ETF in the US, the recent announcements by the Australian regulators of crypto ETPs, you just mentioned there that earlier in the segment that Hong Kong regulator is seeing filings, so we're likely to see more exchange traded instruments with mass appeal, mass access. that will come to market, and that can only be good for the Bitcoin price.